Saturday for this program. I do apologize in advance. I have a cough, and so I'm hoping to not do that during this presentation. But so my name is Randa Lopez Morgan. I am the Events and Programming Librarian at LSU, and I'm also the liaison to the College of Agriculture, Coast and Environment, and to the Geology Department. I also want to thank and introduce Darcy Rower. She is the teen librarian and oh gosh, you just said it, 30 something 20 somethings
Perfect.
At East Baton Rouge Parish Library, and then Haley Johnson and Sarah Sims are both librarians at LSU, and they're going to be monitoring the chat today. So thank you to EBR for letting me come and talk, and yeah, so let's just go ahead and start. I'm gonna get this share screen. And then slideshow. Okay, y'all can see my screen okay? Yes. Darcy, can y'all see?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right. So yes, my name is Randa Lopez Morgan, and today we are going to be talking about something that I find I'm very passionate about. It's something kind of new for me as well, so I'm also still kind of learning, but this is citizen science. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments, and people will give them to me at the end of this presentation. This is also a modified presentation from the Encyclopedia of Life that did a presentation similar to this. So I kind of ripped some of the stuff from that. So today we're going to be talking about a few different things. We're going to be covering some misconceptions about citizen science. What is science? Who is a scientist? We're going to be discussing citizen science and open access. Open science. We're also going to be talking about the history of citizen science, and then some benefits, challenges, and then how do you get involved? So there is a research guide for this that is open to anyone. I know we have a lot of public patrons here today. So feel free to go and check that out. Some of the links will be included in the presentation today on that guide, and then all the links that I talked about today will be on that guide by the end of next week. Okay, so if we were doing this in person, I would ask you, what does a scientist look like to you? So when I think of a scientist, I think of specific things like, a lab coat, maybe goggles, or a beaker, probably a white dude. I specifically think of Bill Nye the Science Guy because that was who I, watched growing up as a kid. And according to there's this thing called the Draw a Scientist test that happened back in 1990 or 1966. Whenever people were asked to draw a scientist, that people statistically drew white males. And so it was 79% of all U.S. students drew scientists. They were white and male, and girls at age 6 drew female scientists 70% of the time. But then 10 years later, they would start to draw male scientists. And that is really sad because that's not necessarily what scientists look like. Not all of them. And if you look at, I'm sorry, I jumped to a page. If you look at the data now, it's kind of starting to shift what we think of scientists. That idea is shifting, but a lot of times we get stuck in this misconception about you have to look a certain way to be a scientist, and that's not true. These are all scientists, so everyone on the screen is a scientist. So again, a misconception that scientists, anyone can be a scientist. It doesn't have to look like a certain type of person. So a lab coat is great, but those scientists who go out into a field and that are studying something like ecology, maybe wouldn't be wearing a lab coat out there. Now there are scientists who do that, but in this case, maybe not. There's also a stereotype that to be a scientist, you have to go to college and have a degree, but that also isn't necessarily true. Anyone can participate in science and be a scientist. So do you remember, I learned about this in school, but the scientific method. So it's that observation, question, research, hypothesis, test your experiment, then you analyze the data, and then you report your conclusions. If you follow that process, that makes you a scientist. And science is not just for this elite few people that can participate in it. Anyone can participate in the scientific process. There's also a misconception about what people research. Research can be anything, and it can be on any topic. And so you don't have to get so caught up in the like, oh, well, I don't know anything about space. Well, if you're interested in space, there are projects you can be associated with that are about space. There's also this wonderful website I'm going to share with you guys on the guide, and it's a picture of scientists' photos. And it's just this really sweet where actual scientists write letters to children about, what they look like and what fields they're doing research in. And it's really important. So what is citizen science? So citizen science is the scientific research conducted in whole or in part by amateur or non-professional scientists. This is also known as crowd science, civic monitoring, volunteer monitoring, network science, participatory monitoring research. So basically scientists will collect large amounts of data, and because it can take so much time to go through it all, and that costs time and money, a lot of scientists don't have either. And so they pull in just everyday human beings to help go through and sort through each of the data sets to make the process go a little faster. And it's also an excellent way to help educate citizens about the environment and the scientific process. So we have this image here where it says science, and it's a scientist in a boat with lots of empty paddles. And then you have a dock that says citizen, and they say need a hand, and it's everyone with a paddle. So it's this idea that if we work together, we can all contribute to science. So since the beginning of time, we've looked up to the sky, and that's where you start to see some of our early citizen scientists. Humans began writing down observations of what they saw, and we can actually go back through history in some of these diaries and journals and look at historical events that were taking place at the time, but they didn't know it. So amateur scientists have always existed. It was Thomas Jefferson, who's not my favorite historical person, but he envisioned a network of weather observers. He would recruit volunteer weather observers in 6 states that included Virginia, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, New York, and North Carolina. And it was on that foundation that in 1849, the Smithsonian Institute set up a system for receiving weather data. And then by the 1990s, the number of observers has grown to 10,000 stations. And the system still exists in the form of the Cooperative Observation Program, and it's used by the National Weather Service. So now there's over 12,000 stations in that network. So, I mean, even since then, another really early one was the Audubon. James J. Audubon started in 1900, the Christmas bird count, and it runs from December 14th through January 5th. And it's literally where human beings go outside between December 14th and January 5th, and then they observe the birds, and they count birds, and they enter in all of this data. So we have a data set that dates all the way back to 1900s about the types of birds that are in our area. However, it wasn't until 2014 that we actually see the phrase citizen science in the Oxford English Dictionary. And then, so this is a bar graph of, and it looks backwards to me, but from 2020 to 2004, or back to 2004, you can see this increase of articles that are published research-wise, and this is through Web of Science. You can see a huge growth in articles being published that discuss citizen science, and it isn't slowing down, and it's increasing every single year. So these are just a few citizen science stats. eBird collects over 7.5 million observations each month. Galaxy Zoo, over 50 million classifications by 150,000 people during its first year. Christmas bird count, which we've mentioned. The Great Backyard Bird Count, there's a ton of checklists that are submitted. So there are thousands of citizen science projects across the world, some of which have gained a lot of traction, from counting birds in the field to classifying galaxy shapes online. The most common citizen science projects are field-based and ecological, in which volunteers are collecting information about organisms and their ecosystems. So birds are far more common subject because they're easy. Everyone can look out your window and count birds. But birds live and use every environment birds live in and use every environment on Earth. So from deserts to rainforests to the polar oceans, they're very accessible and can be easily trained, or observers can be easily trained to identify them. So they can also provide valuable information about bird behaviors, relationships, interdependence in ecosystem health, and climate. I like to talk about the negatives first. So some challenges to this, and this is from a paper. This is a review from a review of citizen science programs for conservation. It was done, and they provided these two really handy charts. So some challenges: there's barriers to participation. So sometimes you need, or most of the time you need, access to the internet. Insufficient funding. So you have to go out into the field and do this stuff. And you have to provide your own equipment. It's not like something is provided for you. Poor experimental design. So sometimes the designs themselves don't make sense to like average everyday people, or they're just bad designs. Sometimes you need very specialized expertise, so you have to be trained a certain way. Lack of specialized equipment, no standard assessment methods. Results are not always accepted. There's political and legal impediments. It's hard to organize volunteers. But all of these things can be overcome through certain, most of these things can be overcome. So some benefits: it provides raw data, it expands the total knowledge, it answers research questions, there's economic incentives to do this. It's also increases advocacy efforts, connects people to their governments and their environments, and then it influences conservation actions. So if lots of people get involved on a project and they are passionate about these projects, you're more likely to see calls for funding for those projects and funding further on. So there's really great benefits to having citizen science. There's also this, it adds into this idea of open science. So open science is the practice of science in such a way that others can collaborate and contribute, where research data, lab notes, and other research processes are freely available under terms that enable reuse, redistribution, and reproduction of the research and its underlying data and methods. All of this goes into this idea of open access, equity, diversity and inclusion, open data, is all part of this idea of open science. It helps with transparency, publication bias. The costs of publishing are outrageous. Who can get access to this information? So all of this idea of open science means that it can be modified and shared and used by anyone. So some examples of this are a couple of things we're about to talk about, but you are contributing to open science whenever you participate in citizen science projects. So this is a website called iNaturalist. We're going to be talking about this one quite a lot because some of the projects that we use are through iNaturalist, and it's basically where anyone can go and take a picture of birds or plants or animals or whatever. Not that birds aren't animals, but you can take pictures of it and mark where you saw this thing at. So in this example, you see the American alligator, and it was actually spotted over on Myrtle Dell here in Baton Rouge. An alligator in Myrtle Dell, how cool is that? And researchers can take this information, these observations, and use that information for their papers and for their research. So you will, make your observation and upload to iNaturalist, a biodiversity observation platform and community. So once an observation is uploaded, members of that community can help to identify the observation to a species level or higher level. So they'll say, okay, this was the alligator Mississippianus, which is the scientific name of the American alligator. And then once several members of the community agree on an identification, the observation is upgraded to research grade, and the data, so the image, location, time, and any other information provided by users flows from iNaturalist into other open science resources. So one of those resources is the Encyclopedia of Life, which uses all of this data. So observation data flows to the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, GBIF, and open access biodiversity data repository, which is just a fancy word of saying it's a collection. An image flows to Encyclopedia of Life and global biodiversity open resource that gathers and shares information about every species on Earth. So you're contributing, and if we were, so this little map to the left is kind of zoomed in very close, but if you were to zoom that back out, you would see other places where the American alligator has been tracked, and it's mostly on the south and in the coast. But there's places that you might find it surprising. Researchers can utilize the data from GBIF to understand research, to address questions about the natural world, to understand about ecosystem health, effects of climate change, migration patterns, distribution of invasive and endangered species, and more. So anyone can reuse and repurpose information, data, and media from Encyclopedia of Life for use in research, education, and personal interest. So again, this is completely open. If you're doing a project or your kids are doing a project on the American alligator, they can go to the Encyclopedia of Life and use that information for their papers, which is pretty cool. So how do I get involved, you might ask? So involvement can be as little or as much as you want. There are some projects that require very little involvement. You might just, select a couple of things and that's it. And then there are others where you might work directly with the scientists. So how involved you want to be is up to you. Another really great thing about citizen science is it can be a really great way to introduce, your kids or your family to science. And there's going to be different projects that might pique anyone's interest, but maybe some family members as well. Okay, so these are some fun projects that I think are great. The spectrum of citizen science projects is vast. So climate, and I'm going to pull up some of these at the end of this presentation. So you have climate, so things like where you measure the rainfall and the weather, and you submit the data each week. Penguin watch, where you can count penguins and chicks and their eggs. There's stuff on astronomy, so Galaxy Zoo and SETI are both astronomy based. There's ones that are psychological or social sciences, like Lab in the Wild. You test different abilities that you might have. Health sciences, flu near you. There's also one that's COVID based called COVID Near You, where you can track that stuff. And even history has them. So the Smithsonian Transcription Center is really cool. You can transcribe or read historical, journals and then write. So if you can read Old English handwriting, or if you're really good at other languages, this can be a really great resource for you to get involved with. Some local projects, I'm going to talk about these again in just a minute so you can actually see them. I See Change. So this is like Instagram, but for weather. So you can take pictures of the wild Baton Rouge weather that we have. The app is free to download. There's eBird, so help identify birds in your backyard. Journey North, you can use it to track migrations and seasons. Frog Watch USA, so track when you hear the frogs sing. And then Project Squirrel, you become a squirrel monitor, which is pretty fun. And then another project that is more closely kind of, if you would like to participate, and it's local, the Louisiana Master Naturalist of Greater Baton Rouge for the City Nature Challenge 2021. It's going to be a 4-day competition, and we compete with everyone across the globe. It's from April 30th to May 3rd. So we are competing against Greater New Orleans area and the Southwest Louisiana area. And it's basically to take as much pictures and data about anything that you see outside. So wild plants, animals, insects, mushrooms, fish, turtles, anything. And you can use it to show how diverse the Baton Rouge wildlife and ecosystems are. So basically you just find wildlife, you take a picture, you upload it. Oh, you can't really see that. It's supposed to be inaturalist.org, that website we just talked about. And then it will automatically be added to the contest project. And this is open to anyone living in Ascension, Assumption, East Baton Rouge, East Feliciana, Iberville, Livingston, Point Coupee, St. Helena, St. James, basically the Baton Rouge surrounding areas. So before I leave you, I want to show you some of these resources. So this is the research guide. Can everyone see the research guide I just shared? I want to make sure that I'm sharing the right thing?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the research guide, this will be kind of your landing spot. These are different projects you can get involved with, and I've linked the ones that are local, and then different project websites that are kind of more broad, and then the Baton Rouge City Nature Challenge, so more information on how to get involved with that. And then also some library resources that are free for you to use. So open access databases, and then some journals, and then other related guides. This is that letters to a pre-scientist. So picture scientist if you're interested in that. Here's that iNaturalist observation. I wish there was an easier way of jumping back and forth between presentation and screens, but it's fine. This is what that American alligator, and if we were to zoom out, this is where you can start to see everywhere, like in Arkansas and the beginning or the top of Alabama, all the way over to like, where is this? North Carolina, almost to Virginia, which is pretty cool. This is that community collaborative rain and hail and snow observation. So the 24-hour precipitation, we had a lot of rain move here through the past 24 hours. So you can kind of see, if we were to zoom in, somewhere the heavier rain fell last night, which makes sense. Penguin watch. So each of these different, anything on Zooniverse, this website, will actually do a little like training where you will walk through how to identify each of the things, what you're looking for. So that tells you, like, if there's too small to count, ignore any penguins in the background, like 1 and 2. You're looking for penguins in the foreground. What happens if the image is too blurry? Because some of these projects do take a little more training. But once you go through the training, you can easily, and sometimes they even have like a practice, you can identify, okay, these are adults. I don't see any chicks just right off, or eggs, but then you'll hit next. And that is citizen science, what you're doing. So you're just clicking stuff. There are people that get so into this that on like Friday nights, instead of going out, they'll just be sitting with their laptops looking at like penguins, which is fun. Galaxy Zoo. So this is another one that's really cool where you can look at different stars. This one is really cool too, because they've done a lot of, they've discovered, citizen scientists have made large discoveries about different topics. About different astronomy, topics, I guess, using Galaxy Zoo. This is SETI, which is looking at using radio frequencies. So you can run this program on your computer and listen for, different radio waves that are going on through the galaxy. Lab in the Wild is that social science one where you can do things like, test your spatial reasoning. Can you, do you make assumptions about people without knowing it? And these are very easy, kind of like quizzes almost, where you can participate, and they get you more information about yourself, and then you go through a test, and then they'll, tell you, okay, you do this more than others, and you can kind of see where you're at, but also you're contributing to science. Flu near you tracks the flu. This is that Smithsonian transcription resource that I was telling you about. They have some really cool stuff right now about cowboys. So if you're interested in cowboys, who isn't? You can do that. Some of these have already been fulfilled. So you might have to, say 100% complete. But you can kind of see, somebody went through some of this and like they translated or they, digitized this information. So you can be part of that process as well. I see change. So this is looking at just Baton Rouge. This is a picture I took of a hailstorm that came through my neighborhood last week. So if anybody lives in Broadmoor, you probably had some hail. It was roughly like a quarter size hail, and pretty not common for us to have it. So I just tracked it, and it pulled the data. It pulled the weather information from like the weather service. And then I said, it was pretty unusual. and just uploaded a picture. And I take pictures of storms all the time, crazy cloud formations and things like that. Baton Rouge is kind of lacking in our area of like what's going on. So if anybody wants to contribute to that, that would be awesome. Here's a manatee that was in Ascension Parish, which is really neat. But the reason we contribute to stuff like this is a report that was done that looks at how New Orleans IC changers are informing flood planning. And y'all, we live in Baton Rouge. We know how bad it floods around here. So we could use this data to help our city planners better prepare for flooding and things like that. So the more neighbors posting, the better. So they're talking about neighborhoods in New Orleans that were seriously flooded. Residents can identify places for potential adaptation infrastructure. So maybe new places to add, drainage ditches and things like that. Drainage details during storm events are useful. So maybe this was they told me the pumps were beginning to catch up with the deluge. So maybe this was just an area that hadn't been pumped well enough. And then they also use it to give clues to how high floodwaters reach. So this person's, identifying how high that water came up. So information about catch basins and other stormwater infrastructure alongside flood observations provide important context. So you can kind of see how deep that water is. But that's just one way that we can use IC change to help inform and better plan. And it's free. There's an app. I have it on my phone. It's really easy to upload that information. This is eBird. So these are East Baton Rouge sightings of birds that are in our area. So if you're a birder, if you're interested in that, you can track birds there. Journey North is looking at the different maps. So you can do a daylight map where, you track when you start to see daylight, which is kind of cool. And hummingbirds, the first time you might hear frogs sing and things like that. So if you're interested, frog first heard singing. There's also the Frog Watch, which I'm not going to go into because it's just when you see frogs, you track it. Project Squirrel, we have a lot of gray fox squirrels. I think that's what they're called. And brown squirrels, gray versus fox, that's it. You learn the difference between the different the different squirrels, help me, Lord. And then you can track them so that the scientists that are researching squirrel behavior can go and find more information. And then finally, this is that Baton Rouge City Nature Challenge website. So if you're interested in participating in that, it's a really low entry, really easy way to get into citizen science. You're literally just going outside and taking pictures. And it's really funny because you'll start to get like it's almost like Pokemon Go in some ways. Like at midnight, the night before it's due, you'll have people outside taking pictures of like nighttime bugs because they want their area to get ahead of everyone. So that's kind of cool. So that being said, let me see if I can start from right here. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. Again, my name is Randa Lopez Morgan. That's my email, rlope12@lsu.edu. I am just a participant in citizen science. I enjoy it. I'm still learning a lot about it. So I hope that this was somewhat helpful for you today. And then here's some references because I have to put them. But does anyone have any questions? Oh, I see one right here. So I'm an aspiring cosmologist, and I was wondering if Galaxy Z or SETI deals with supernova research. I'm sure they do. I have not, I'll be honest, not gotten to dig as deeply as I would like to in Galaxy Zoo or SETI. SETI looks a lot at like radio waves. And so whatever, if there are supernovas, I know that there are supernovas that give off major radio waves, then definitely. And then Galaxy Zoo, hold on, let me see if I can find. I know that Galaxy Zoo has been responsible for lots of scientific discoveries. Let me see, supernova research. Yeah, It looks like maybe, let's see. There's the publications, there's Space Andromeda, Backyard Worlds, Disc Detectives, Exoplanets, Galaxy Nurseries, Galaxy Zoo, more information there. Planet Hunters. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. So yes, it looks like they are taking pictures and doing stuff with supernovas. So join on in. And there's so many other space citizen science projects. There's ones that are looking at so nurseries of stars, looking at new stars, and citizen scientists discovered like a new type of star, which is pretty cool. So you can another commoner question. So you can participate on these websites and contribute to the data and research, even if you don't have a qualified background. Yes. So one of the downsides to citizen science is, you are working with someone who does not have a background in this. But again, all of those websites that I showed you, there are training materials that teach you what they're looking for. Yes, you can contribute right now as a 14-year-old, as long as you go through that little training tutorial, and they'll tell you, okay, you need to make sure that, these are what we're looking for. These are the parameters you need to look at. That's what they're looking for. That they need human beings to go through and just tag the stuff, or to identify, oh, is that a penguin or is that a rock? And that's something that you would think like, okay, a computer could do that, but a computer can't. And instead of having a scientist sit down for hours at a time do this, you have me, who's, has nothing to do on Saturday nights and would like to just learn more about, or tag pictures of penguins. So anyone can participate as long as you have an internet connection and an eager spirit. You can totally just go on to Penguin Watch and participate. And it's pretty cool. Like I said, some of these people get really into it. Like there was a story about this one man who like went through like 1,500 images or something, just because he was like super into it. And like he put on some music and was just kind of like tagging stuff. And before he knew it, he was into a bunch of different stuff. So that's pretty cool. There's one right here that I will share my screen and show you guys. This is Radio Galaxy Zoo. So help astronomers locate and identify supermassive black holes and star-forming galaxies. And they will, so you will do a tutorial and they'll teach you, okay, this is what you need to do. I'm not going to go through this entire tutorial, but you get to know the interface, so that it tells you what they're looking for, and they train you so that you are prepared. And also sometimes you get weird things, that things happen and you're just like, okay, I don't understand what's going on in this picture, and people are talking about it. So there's like help, notes, science, general discussion. So if you need help with something, you can, tag it and people will help you, do that. Hope that made sense. So yes, you can contribute. Does anyone else have any questions? And we want you to contribute. That's, the wonderful thing about citizen science. I share on that research guide some news articles about, butterflies are vanishing due to climate change. That was a newspaper article. And the whole reason they were able to figure that out was because of citizen scientists. Citizen scientists are helping researchers design new drugs to combat COVID-19. Algal bloom strikes Mirror Lake. Officials say formation near Pueblo Beach could be harmful to humans and animals. It was discovered by citizen scientists. Citizen scientists discover strange new world that pro astronomers missed. So citizen scientists are very complete, very good at finding every little blip in the data. So yeah, go citizen scientists. Go out and contribute and do awesome things with your citizen science self. Any more questions? And if you have questions, about different topics or different, how do I get involved? I'm interested in this thing. You can always email me and we can see if we can find you a project. You can talk to Darcy. She's fantastic. She can help you possibly find some projects. Chances are there's going to be something out there that you could be interested in. All right. Well, thank you all so much for attending my talk. I hope that it was informative and hopefully entertaining. Let me know if y'all have any questions. And thank y'all so much for joining me today on a great, beautiful Saturday. Y'all could have spent outside, but now y'all can go take pictures of outside and post them to iNaturalist or IC
Thank you so much, Randa. And thank you, Haley and Sarah, as well, and all of LSU Libraries. We appreciate this so much that y'all would come and talk to us about something so cool as citizen science.
Yeah, thank y'all for letting us have this opportunity to talk. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.